O king, I shall in due course explain the measurement of time in its gross and subtle features with the specific symptoms of each, but for the present, let me explain unto you the Pādma-kalpa. So, yesterday, Asai Prabhu was explaining this very nice verse where it describes that there's three different types of kalpas. There's the day of Brahma, which is just called kalpa, which explains the visarga, the creation of Lord Brahma, or the creation of all the bodies of the living entities within the universe and the disbursement of the material elements. And then there's Vikalpa, which means the lifespan of Lord Brahma, his 100 years. And then there's a Mahakalpa. Somebody's making a little bit of noise. I don't know who. This is the Sarga, the creation of the primeval Lord, encompassing one breath of Mahavishnu, or the creation of the 24 elements. So this is a summary of the answer to the question of Maharaj Parikshit back in chapter 8 of this canto, where he asks Shukadeva Goswami to speak about the kalpas and their subdivisions and how time is perceived, past, present, and future, and the lifespan of humans, the devatas, and the pitris. Somebody's making noise. Let me just go back and check if I can see who is the culprit. Can't tell. Aha, here we go. Okay, that'll be better. So, if you look at this first slide here, we have a chart from the Skanda Purana of the different names of each of the kalpas, or the days of Lord Brahma's month. So each one of those days is a creation of Lord Brahma. This was all from the purport, but it's from the Skanda Purana. And as you can see here, it starts with the Sveta Kalpa, which is the present kalpa that we're in, this creation. And it's called Varaha Kalpa because Lord Varaha appears. Also, it's called Sveta Varaha Kalpa, or just Pādma-kalpa because Lord Brahma is born on the lotus flower. And then each of these have names, just like in the middle we have the Kumara Kalpa, and that's considered like the full moon of Brahma's month. And then the last one, the Pitri Kalpa, is the dark moon of Brahma's month. And then you see here, just above that, it says Mahesh Shvara Kalpa. In that Kalpa, Lord Shiva destroys Tripura. So this is described in the Bhagavatam, and you would think that that happened in the past, or does it happen in the future? Because we're here the first day of Lord Brahma, and this is almost the last day of Brahma, encompassing billions of years. So how is that? This is important as far as understanding our perception of time. So we can give the example. If somebody asks you, did you eat? Or did you sleep? Or they may ask, will you eat? Or will you sleep? Whether we say yes or whether we say no, both are correct. And the reason is because these activities take place at regular intervals. Over billions of years, what's being described here, there's no chronological order. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that all these different days of Lord Brahma, they have happened in the past and they will happen in the future. So therefore, the description about the Lord and his activities and of great devotees of the Lord, it's not necessarily that it's in chronological order, because these things happen all the time. It's just like if you have a Broadway drama, it happens every night. It starts at 6 o'clock. So it's very important to understand our perception of time as will be delineated here in the Bhagavatam. So we'll go to the next slide. And today's verse is describing how time is perceived, or at least that's part of the question of Maharaj Parikshit, which Shukadeva Goswami says that he will answer in detail later on. But what is stated is that time has form and it can be measured. It says in Sanskrit, kalpa, lakshana, vigraham, that kalpas time is described in terms of kalpas, because without lakshana, without the quality of a kalpa or its other subdivisions, time cannot be measured. So the present kalpa is the Varaha kalpa, which is the first day of the first month of the second half of Brahma's life. So to understand this vast duration of time that the Srimad Bhagavatam is speaking of, we can try and look at these charts here. Depending on what kind of screen you have, this may be quite small and hard to see and read, but I'll try and interpret it for you. Let's see, I have a little tool here. It's a pointer, highlighter, pen. There we go, laser pointer. Okay, so maybe this will be better. So up here, these marks, they represent all the different lifetimes of Lord Brahma. Because the universes are so numerous, we can't even estimate how many there are. But what we do know from the Bhagavatam is that our universe is the youngest and smallest of all the universes. And our Lord Brahma only has 4 heads. All the other Lord Brahmas, they have hundreds, thousands, even millions of heads, depending on the size and the duration of the existence of their universe. So, our Lord Brahma, he lives for 100 of his years, which in our estimation is 311 trillion years. And of that 100 years, he has passed 51 years. This is where we are right here. So that 1 year is comprised of 360 days. So that's a duration. You just move the decimal point over, and it's 3.11 trillion years. So right now, we are in the 456th Yuga cycle in a day of Lord Brahma. Because these are called Divya Yugas or Maha Yugas. That means when you take the Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali Yuga, that's called one Divya Yuga, or a Yuga of the demigods. So such 1,000 Divya Yugas or Maha Yugas make up just one of Lord Brahma's days. So we're on the 456th Yuga cycle, and during a day of Brahma, there are 14 Manus. So we're on the 456th Yuga cycle of the 7th Manu, Vaivasvata Manu. So that means that 2 billion years have gone by in Lord Brahma's day, and we have 2.32 billion years to go. So if we go over to here, to this chart, this would be the lifetime of Lord Brahma. This would be about in his day, so we're right in the middle there, in the middle of this Manvantara, in this Divya Yuga, with the Satya Yuga having passed 1.7 million years, the Treta Yuga having passed 1.2, 1.3 million years, Dwapara, 864,000 years. In the Kali Yuga, we've passed 5,000 years, which means that we have 427,000 years to go. So here we are. So when you look at these vast durations of time, we get a little bit of an inkling just about where we are and how small we are. So let's see if I can get rid of this pointer. How do we do that? There, that worked. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, number 3. So again, the point was, one of the points of this verse is, how is time perceived? What sense do we use to perceive time? There's online you can find the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, and there's a nice article there called Experience and Perception of Time. It's an easy read. It's not like overtaxing. I found it very interesting. There it pointed out, it asked the question, how do you know time, or what instruments of perception do we use to understand what is time? You know, just like we can hear, taste, touch, smell, we can see things. So what of those senses, or what combination of those senses do we use to measure time? For example, if we were tied up and we couldn't have any sensory perception whatsoever, would it be possible for us to perceive time? Somebody's making some noise. Let's see who it is. Aha. Okay. Would it be possible without any sensory input for us to perceive time? Well, maybe if we could see the thoughts in our heads having a sequence, but it would probably be difficult. So everybody, except for 2 people that I muted, anyone
Hello?
have any ideas?
Yes.
How do we perceive time?
I have an idea.
Okay.
Just like jet lag. When, let's say you leave on a plane at 7 in the morning and you arrive somewhere at 7 in the morning, you get jet lag because your body thinks it's 8. You've traveled some time, but you're going 1,000 miles an hour going the other way, and you arrive and it's 7 o'clock in the morning. But it was 24 hours ago. So your metabolism gets all screwed up.
Okay.
So that is one symptom of knowing that time has passed. And by the way, the cure for that is when you arrive after a long jet trip, is to sit outside in the sun.
Oh, interesting.
For a few hours or all day, and then it sets your body clock to the location where you are.
Anyone else have any ideas?
And set your watch also.
What senses, or what set of senses do we use to perceive time?
Well, I was thinking pain. When you're in pain, time takes a lot longer, and when you're enjoying
very good.
Go by very quickly.
Okay.
Very good. That's from Einstein. Einstein said, time with your girlfriend goes fast, but if you put your hand on a hot iron, it goes very slow. That's Einstein's example.
Okay, anyone? One more. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna, I would suggest...
Wait a minute, let me try and get rid of this noise. It's too difficult to hear. Oh, you know what, Chuchananda Prabhu, that's you. Could you mute?
It's not me.
Okay.
I was sitting perfectly still.
No, but if you could mute. Okay, there you go. Okay, go ahead.
I would
No,
say,
actually, it wasn't Chuchananda. My apologies, somebody else. Go ahead. Now we're okay.
Okay, I would say it's the passage of time can be seen by the changes of our own body.
Okay.
You know, when we're child, and as we're growing, we're progressing in a certain direction, and change.
Oh, very good, very good.
By old age, then it's definitely there's like a linear progression.
That's great. That's great. Actually, I think you gave the best. And Damayanti Mataji says hunger, thirst comes in regular intervals. All of those are true. So if you're looking at your screen, I know that this is probably difficult for you to interpret what you're looking at. This is a method called kinetic segmentation. So what I'm going to do is, this is actually a video. I'm going to turn it on, and if you can try to guess what it is that you're looking at. As soon as I turn on the video, if it's more clear, the first one that figures it out, if you could please go ahead and say what you see. Anybody?
There's 6 monkeys in there.
6 monkeys?
No.
It's not 6 monkeys.
I
Okay, you ready? Here it goes. 1, 2, 3. Nobody got it?
Okay, there's a little doggy.
There you go.
Kind of animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're dogs.
Monkeys are some dogs.
Maybe it didn't come through very well because
It's still mushy.
It did. I think it came through well. They were
Okay,
hard to
let's try it
perceive.
one more time.
Oh, yeah.
You see what's going on?
Yeah.
Yeah, dog's playing with the mother dog. So what's happening here is this is to give an example, a visual example of change, how we can perceive time through movement and change. What you're seeing here is actually time transpiring. Aristotle said that time is not change, yet time is not without change. We apprehend time only when we mark motion. We mark a before and we mark an after and different nows separated by space, and in the middle between them. That's what we call time. So let's go to the next slide. This is a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 11. Lord Kapila Dev explaining the movement of time. This is verse 3. He's explaining that time, although it's subtle, it can be measured. So I didn't take the entire verse. I just took a few words that I thought were important. So Lord Kapila Dev says, Kala api anumita shukshme. So shukshma means something that is subtle, or in other words, can't be perceived or easily perceived by the senses. So what he's saying here is that time, although it's subtle, just like atoms cannot be perceived directly, similarly, time, because it's of its subtle nature, it cannot be perceived. However, it can be measured. Then, in the second part of the verse, he says, Stalye stanam bhuktya. It can be perceived by the gross atoms when they form different combinations. The atoms, when they move, you can perceive time, which is very interesting. Because if you think about it, just like either if somebody might challenge us or we may have doubts in our own mind, that can we perceive spirit? Is spirit real or not? Because you can't perceive it through the senses. Whatever knowledge acquiring senses that we have at our disposal, you can't directly perceive spirit. But at the same time, we cannot perceive time as well, although everyone uses time on a daily basis and we know it exists, but it can't be directly perceived. It's just like if somebody was to say, show me atoms. You can't. They're unperceivable by the senses. However, you can see their symptoms. There's a cathode ray tube, and they shoot gamma and alpha rays through an apparatus, and then by the impression it makes on the cathode ray tube, you can say that this means that that's a track of an atom. So everyone accepts it. Similarly, the existence of subtle things, the most subtle thing being spirit, even though you can't perceive them with your gross senses, by their symptoms they can be understood. So in a similar way, we can understand time. So we'll go to the next slide, slide 5. Chapter 11 of the 3rd canto is called Calculation of Time from the Atom. So time and space are co-relative terms. In order to understand one, you need to understand the other. And time is measured by the velocity that light traverses atomic space, a certain amount of atomic space, by utilizing the sun as a clock. You can make a clock out of anything that has constant repetition. You can make a clock out of drops of water coming at a steady interval, from sand going through an hourglass, from springs moving gears, from the frequency of a quartz crystal, or the National Institute of Standards and Technology. They've developed a machine that shoots microwaves at psyllium atoms, and the psyllium atoms vibrate at a certain frequency, and they're able to make a clock out of that. They estimate, is supposed to be accurate up to 8 million years. It won't lose a second, either forward or backwards. So, pretty impressive. But is that as accurate as the sun? No. The sun lasts for billions of years. So the Srimad Bhagavatam utilizes the sun as a clock by measuring sunlight passing over atoms. So from the very first verse of this chapter 11, it describes what is an atom. An atom is it's called charama, which means it's the ultimate particle. It's sangyuta, which means it's unmixed, or in other words, it's indivisible, which goes against so-called modern physics. It directly says, Lord Kapila says, that it's not formed into bodies. Even when all the dissolution of the entire universe, it remains without form. They're never destroyed. So when they ask, what about subatomic particles? In 1897, J.J. Thomson was the first one to discover an electron. And then since then, there's electrons, neutrons, protons, gluons, etc. There's dozens and dozens of all these different subatomic particles that physicists say exist. But we should note that that is all theoretical physics. No one has ever seen, and no one will ever be able to see an atom. So what to speak of subatomic particles? And there all are alternative theories. Even in quantum mechanics, there's the wave theory that when you get in a subatomic, so-called subatomic level, that those so-called particles don't act like particles at all. They act like waves of energy. But according to the Bhagavatam, the atom is the ultimate particle. It doesn't get any smaller than that. It's indivisible. So we go with the Srimad Bhagavatam's knowledge that is infallible. So if we look over here, I'll grab my little pointer, laser pen. So over here, this is the atom. This is the smallest particle. It's called Paramanu. You can measure time in units of light passing over an atom. So for light to pass over a Paramanu, it takes approximately 26.3 microseconds. So to give you an idea what a microsecond is, the average human eyelid blinks at about a third of a second, and it would take 350,000 microseconds for us to blink our eye. That's how small these units of time is. So we're talking about 26.3 microseconds. If you take one paramanu, one atom, and you group it together, forming two, then it becomes a paramanu. An anu. So two paramanus becomes an anu, and then three such anus becomes a tresarenu. Three tresarenu makes a truti. So we have 2 times 3 times 3, which is 18 atoms grouped together, is called a truti, which takes 474 milliseconds to traverse. That's 1 millionth of a second, so it's 474 of such seconds to traverse. So if we look over here, excuse me, I know this must be very difficult to see on this side, but what it is it shows the Vedic standpoint of the smallest unit that can be measured of time, a truti, down here at the bottom, all the way up to seconds, minutes, years of the human form, all the way up to the demigods, and here at the top, the life cycle of Lord Brahma, his 100 years, or 311 trillion years, which is 23 zeros behind a 1 in the positive. So to give an idea of the scale of time that we're talking about, we know from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's described that Lord Brahma, he stole the cows and the cowherd boys, and he took away and put them in a cave for only 1 moment, the smallest unit of his time, which was 1 of our Earth years. So if we were to take that same calculation, which I didn't make any of this up, this comes from the Wikipedia, somebody calculated this, that 1 truti would be compared to 1 of our years, it would 1 truti would be just like 1 of our years would be like the lifetime of Lord Brahma. The entire lifespan of the universe would be 1 of our years if we were a truti. And a paramanu would, 1 of our seconds would be like the lifetime of Lord Brahma. It's that vast. Now let's go to the next slide. Okay, slide 6. So, now, this is a representation of the Bhagavatam's describing how time is calculated. So atomic time is calculated by light covering units of atomic space. And it's calculated that 1 second divided into 1687.5 parts is 1 truti. So that's the velocity that the sun traverses 18 atomic particles. So I tried to ask some other devotees that might know more than that might be up on this, and I couldn't really get any specific answers, but it would appear that when you take this cluster of 18 atomic particles, since the atoms cannot be perceived, they're so small that even light cannot reflect them. When you put 18 of them together in a truti, then light can reflect off of them and you can actually see them. So the Bhagavatam describes that they can be perceived when you see light streaming through the screen of a window. So it would appear like the diameter of a sunbeam. So interesting how this is done. It's such a small unit of time compared to us, and then we're so small compared to universal time. It gives us some sort of an idea of where we stand, how small we are. So go to the next slide, 7. Just 1 second. I have to see who's making noise. Okay. Then the next question would be, what is time? We know from the Srimad Bhagavatam, from the Bhagavad Gita, that kala is, or time, is destruction. It means annihilation. From the moment that we are born, we begin to die. Srila Prabhupada points out that from the moment we take birth, let's say if we're 1 year old, then we've died for 1 year. Because the moment there is creation, there is destruction. The only thing that keeps it together is spirit. Without spirit, as soon as there's creation, immediately it would be annihilation. Only spirits hold it together. So in this regards, in the Srimad Bhagavatam 12th canto, chapter 7, verse 17, we quoted this a month or two ago when we gave a class at the beginning of this chapter. It is stated, there are 4 types of cosmic annihilation: occasional, elementary, continuous, and ultimate, all of which are affected by the inherent potency of the Supreme Lord. Learned scholars have designated this topic dissolution, or in other words, dissolution, which is called Nirodha, one of the topics of a Mahapurana like the Srimad Bhagavatam, Nirodha. So 4 types, they're called Atyantika, Prakritika, Naimitaka, and Nitya. So Atyantika means that when we ultimately go back home, back to Godhead, everything is annihilated and we're liberated. Then there's Prakritika. Prakritika means elementary annihilation. In other words, the end of the universe, when Mahavishnu breathes back in. And then there's Naimitaka, which is occasional. In other words, at the end of every one of Lord Brahma's days. And then there's Nitya. Nitya means continuous, always going on, or, as we say in modern terms, entropy. Entropy is the second law of thermodynamics, which states that entropy increases as matter and energy degrade into an ultimate state of inert uniformity. So you can think of it just like this. The example is given. If you take a drop of ink and you put it into like a beaker of water, as soon as it touches the water, it'll lose its form of a drop and immediately start to disperse evenly or chaotically, rather, within the beaker. The same with the clay pot. You can take anything that's created as an example. Let's say a clay pot. It was earth previously, clay, then you make it into a form, and then from the moment it takes that form, it may take a long, long time, but eventually it'll degrade and it'll go into its inert state of uniformity back to what it came from originally. The only thing that caused it to become created to a form is spirit, to hold it together for some time. Without the touch of the spirit, it goes back into its inert state. So the clay pot came from earth, and it'll go back to earth. And then the earth eventually will turn into odor. And the odor turns into water. Water transforms back into taste. Taste transforms into fire. Fire transforms into form. Form turns back into air. Air turns into touch, and touch turns back into space, Akash. And then Akash merges back into its original form of sound. Therefore, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhutva Bhutva Paliyate, that again and again the living entities, they're created and they're destroyed. That's what this whole material world is all about. So to give us an understanding, I've got a video here. I'm going to read from my notes when I turn this on, and then I hope this makes an impact on people. So as time marches on, entropy, marches on. Notice what happens when our movie violates the law of entropy. When the cards become more ordered, it looks like time has been reversed. You can always tell when a movie is running backwards when it violates the principle of entropy. Time is the relentless process of destruction, or what in modern terms is called entropy. So we go to slide number 8. There's 2 slides to go. So our perception of time is relative. There's a principle called motion parallax. Now I'm going to turn on this film here, and you can watch it and see what happens. So if we're traveling on a car or a train, you notice the things that are close by, like the telephone poles, they pass very fast in front of us. Whereas things are in the distance, like buildings, trees, mountains, they move very slowly. This shows that time is distorted. According to our motion within space, if things are closer to us, they appear to move faster, and if they're farther away, they move slower. The same with our size. If something is very small relative to something that's very big, the larger object and the smaller object, their perception of time is distorted. It's just like if you have a small bug, like an ant or a mosquito or a fly, they appear to move very, very fast. You know, like if you have a mosquito, you have to really move fast to try and swat it, and almost every time it's going to get away. The reason is because that small insect, to us, our movements appear to be very slow and cumbersome. So according to the size, it distorts our perception of time. In the Bhagavatam, there's a description of how Kurma and Vasuki and the Mandara mountain, they were being churned in the ocean of nectar by the demons and the demigods. And it's described that the demons and the demigods, they were within the ocean of milk up to their waist. So we can just imagine what their size is. To us, to hear these kind of stories is fantastic. How could it be possible that you could stand in the ocean and it would come up to your waist? Similarly, the demigods, when they look at us, we're so small and tiny, and also our duration of life is so small. The perception of time and space becomes completely distorted or relative. Just like Lord Brahma, he lives for 100 of his days. I'm sorry, 100 of his years, 100 of his years. And that is relative to us. He experiences his 100 years just like we experience our 100 years. I was recently looking at a Ken Burns documentary about the Civil War. And it was interesting, and in one episode, the soldiers that were coming back from fighting for 4 years in the Civil War, they were saying that when they got back to their farms or whatever, they felt like they had only been gone for a day or so, that hardly any time had passed, as if they had not left at all, or maybe left for a day or so. And I think that especially for, many of the devotees that are on our Sangha here, we're getting up there in years. We're getting elderly. And do we really feel like time has passed? Like 60 or 70 years have passed. It feels like we were just boys yesterday, and hardly any time has passed at all. So the same experience is there for Lord Brahma. It is all relative. Because we are spirit souls, we are eternal, we are beyond time. No matter what the duration of time is, whether we're a small ant or an amoeba that just has a few moments of time compared to us, or up to Lord Brahma, it is never enough because we are essentially outside of time. We are eternal. So this is the last slide that I'm going to right here. This is slide number 9, nothing interactive, but very important slide. Rupa Goswami has described Anubhava. Anubhava means the seed of love of Godhead has just about started to fructify, and certain symptoms of love of Godhead become present. So some of the symptoms of Anubhava are things like detachment, great eagerness, a taste for chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord. When we hear bhava, you can think about ecstatic symptoms. But those ecstatic symptoms, such as shivering, crying, palpitation on the body, those can actually be imitated through practice. Just like any actor, he can bring tears, he can come into a state of emotion, and it can actually affect you. You can cry in the presence of such a person, a good actor. So these things are qualities that can be practiced and imitated. But things like eagerness for residing in the Dham, detachment, freedom from false vestige, those things cannot be imitated. So there's 9 symptoms like that. And one of them is avyarta kalatvam, which means being freed from wasting time. This is very, very essential. So in the there's a verse, the first verse of the 30th chapter, the 3rd canto. The translation is, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, as a mass of clouds does not know the powerful influence of the wind, a person engaged in material consciousness does not know the powerful strength of the time factor by which he is being carried. So, beautiful example. Just think about it. A bank of clouds. They are literally floating mountains of water in the sky. If all of the water in a sky full of clouds was to fall all of a sudden, it would absolutely devastate whatever was underneath it. It would be just like an atomic explosion. For instance, when submarines go underwater and they get to a certain depth, if they implode because of the pressure, it's instantaneous. Everyone and everything within it becomes just flattened like a pancake. Instant death because of the pressure of the water. So if you had a cloud and instead of raindrops, the whole thing just dropped, it would just devastate whatever is underneath it. As I said, they're literally floating mountains in the sky. Yet, even though they're so big and heavy and powerful, they're imperceptibly pushed by the power of the wind. It cannot be stopped, and they don't know how it's happening. Similarly, we, no matter how powerful we are and how much we've accumulated, how much power we've accumulated, we are imperceptibly being pushed by the power of time and to our ultimate destruction. So, therefore, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is pointing out that Chanakya Pandit, he says that even a moment of time cannot be returned if we are able and willing to pay millions of dollars. Wasted time cannot be calculated, even materially or spiritually. We have to be very, very alert for utilizing the time at our disposal. The conditioned souls have a particular fixed duration of time to live within this body, and within that small duration of time, we have to become Krishna conscious, and thus, avyarta kalatvam, become free from the influence of time. So, in closing, the Christian writer C.S. Lewis, he pointed out, I'm kind of ad-libbing here, but he pointed out that the present point in time touches eternity. in this way. If we continually are concerned with eternity, or in other words, concerned with the Lord, either at present meditating on union with Him or separation from Him, or obeying the present voice of consciousness within us, then we can touch eternity. The future inflames our hopes and our fears. We think about unrealities or those things least like eternity. And the past is frozen, it doesn't flow. Whereas the present moment is lit up with eternal light. Again, that's kind of, I'm ad-libbing how he says it. But in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says, to us, vyavasayatmika buddhi, ekeha kurunanda, to have one pointed attention, that is vyavasayatmika buddhi. It doesn't shake. One pointed attention can be gained by utilizing every moment, not thinking about what we've lost in the past or what we'll gain in the future, but how we can serve the Supreme Lord in this very moment, and then we can be freed from the influence of time. So that's my presentation for the day. I hope that the slides were useful. I thought it would be easier to, get the concepts. But anyone have anything they'd like to add?
Yes, Prabhupada said, to get faith is the root of all the other sadhana kriya, bhajana kriya, sadhana kriya, sadhu sangha, and then up to raga, rati, anartha nivritti, and prema. And he said, to get faith is to hear about Krishna in scientific terms.
Oh,
and you did it. I mean, this really drives home further how we are not part of this material substance. The jiva is totally separate from all of these changes. And in closing, William Jennings Bryan put an ad in the paper in his time, and it said, $100 reward, lost yesterday, 2 hours. If anyone can return it to me, they can claim this reward.
That's good. I'm sorry, I muted 2 people, so...
There's a nice verse in the Vishnu Purana that I think Nahari knows it. It was in 2936 purport. It says that if even for a moment remembrance of Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is missed, that is the greatest loss, that is the greatest illusion, and that is the greatest anomaly.
Sahanistang mahachidram samoha sativibramaha yang muhurtam chamam vapi vasudevam nachintayet. I was thinking, Ram, you were talking about in the past is frozen. I was also thinking, isn't the present, the present is infinitesimally small, isn't the present frozen?
In Vaikuntha.
No, in this world, in the material world, it's kind of like if we look at the passage of time as, say, frames in a movie, there are little tiny frames, but the present is also a tiny little frame that's also kind of frozen.
But there's no time to experience it because you're right into the next.
Exactly. Exactly. It's infinitesimally small. It has to be frozen. But it's just when you line them all up that you get the illusion that there's movement.
Great. The spirit can appreciate the present, but the body always changing. But only the Atma can appreciate the eternal present. That was good.
Yeah.
So when we talk about the verses in Gita where, like Krishna says, Tetang Bhuktva Svargalokam Vishalam, that one who gains through pious activity, one can go to the heavenly planets and enjoy, for many, many years, Vishalam, many years. Really, it's, as you were pointing out, it's kind of relative. It really isn't. You don't really go there for a really long, long time. it's only relative to where we're at, but I guess once you go there, it's really not that long. It's just 100 years in that relative sense. Wouldn't that be correct?
It is a long time, but it doesn't seem like a long time because we're eternal. It's never enough. That's why Lord Brahma...
And I thought you were saying that they, like Lord Brahma, would perceive his life kind of about as long as we perceive our life.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. Because it's all relative.
The pleasure of Brahma and the pleasure of an ant is the same. Eating, sleeping, mating, depending. One is bigger, but in his conception, it's one life.
Interesting.
Like us to an ant or a germ that lives a few moments.
Madan Gopal, who was with us for the last couple of classes, he asked me yesterday, and I wasn't really sure the answer to this question. I sort of told him I would give him a sort of a speculative answer. I'll tell you what that was. I was wondering what others feel on that. He was saying that in the heavenly planets, you live for a very long period of time. And as we go further down from Svargaloka, perhaps to Tapaloka, Maharloka, Janaloka, and the planets of the sages, the life gets shorter. And also here it gets shorter on the Borloka or the earthly planets. In the hellish planets, similarly, he asked the question, does it continue also to get shorter? And my answer was that I have never read anywhere where it described that, though it may be there, I don't recall. But I would assume that it probably does get shorter. Again, all relative. Does anyone know the answer to that?
Well, you can be in hell for thousands of years and suffer.
Mm-hmm.
But the lower species, their time is different. So when the demigods look down at us, they go, ha-ha, we're living long. When they look up to Brahmaloka, they go, oh, they don't feel. So it's relative, just like when we look down and think that a moth only lives a few weeks.
Yeah. That's my thinking. In the hellish planets, it's a lot shorter, though. It may seem like thousands of years, but actually it's quite a bit shorter.
I hope so.
I don't know. I told him I don't know.
We'll get to the description of when you're even being taken to hell. Your skin is stripped off to the quick, and that's how you walk through. They drag you through the desert. I don't care if it's 2 seconds. That's gonna.
When you where someone was saying earlier, when you experience pain, it was Madan who experienced pain. It seems really long, even though it's quite short.
Yeah, when I had a swimming accident a year or two ago, it had crushed part of my ribs and some of my internal stuff, bones, and it was so excruciatingly painful. I couldn't even. It was hard to breathe. So when they were taking me in the ambulance, although it was about a 20-minute ride, I swear it felt like days had passed. It was so painful. The time duration seemed like it was extremely long. So that's the experience, I think, for anybody that goes through pain.
Haribol.
Time changes.
Hey,
Lord Chaitanya, he said one moment was like 12 years or more in separation.
I think Pushkar's got something to add.
Yeah, Pushkar's
got something to add. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, the way Nahari was describing, Svargaloka, as far as I know, is below all the ones you mentioned, not above Tapaloka. No, they're up there, and then Svarga's on the bottom.
Right.
It's like, it doesn't really go in that order. That's all I was going to say.
You're right. That's good correction. Thank you. That's right.
So Svargaloka is nothing compared to the other places that are much more vast.
Good.
But he's saying is the duration of life in the Pataloka shorter than Bhumiloka.
Yeah, well, go there and find out. We'll go there.
I've been there. I don't remember.
Okay. Well, thank you, Prabhus. As I said in the beginning, tomorrow we finish the second canto. Narahari Prabhu is giving class. So thank you all for listening and for viewing. Did
Hare
anyone else
Krishna.
have anything?
Yeah, I wanted to ask something if I still have time. I wanted to ask if it's any correlation you think is between, like this time looks like in a spiritual realm, there is no time, right? No past or future. Even though past time is going on, it's very hard for me to understand, but it says that there is no time, it's only present. And as we know, with a sound and objects, so it's when you go down to this material world, we have past and future, and also there is difference between sound and the object. Because in a spiritual world, sound is the same as an object. So is it, you think, any correlations between these two? Did you understand my question?
Yes.
No. Oh, okay, please go ahead, because I missed it.
I got a thing. I'll say this. There was a science fiction story about a time machine. And the man has a time machine, and another man says, take me back 100 years. He says, okay, come with me, I'll bring the machine, and we go to the beach. Why can't we do it here? Because if we do it in this room, you're on the 10th floor of this building. This building wasn't here 100 years ago. When you arrive 100 years ago, you'll fall 10 stories. Now, the beach is pretty level over the hundreds of years. So we're going to be there. That is my Zen answer of how time works.
You don't need a machine. The beach is probably pretty much the same as it was.
Pretty much the same every year. So that's why. Maybe you'll be ankle deep in the sand 100 years ago. But
what was her question?
Yeah. Eternal time, and yet there are past times.
Yeah, we already discussed it. Astakali, there's time. They're called time periods.
Yes.
Right, but there is also, I was asking if it's any correlation between, as the time is different, here we have like a separation, we have future and past, and the spiritual world is none. The same goes with sound and an object. Here is duality, the sound is one thing and an object is another thing. But in spiritual world is one. The sound is the same as an object. So anyway, it looks like that gap disappears.
Yes.
So I was asking if it's any correlation between those two.
That's why you're supposed to chant Kirtaniya Sadahari, because the sound of Krishna is the same as Krishna, and you'll get in touch with Krishna by the holy name. And the holy name is no question, it's the same as Krishna. It's beyond time and space. So therefore, you'll be... Yeah. So that's the easy problem. Just chant Hare Krishna and you'll find out.
Yeah.
And everything is purna. Everything is full. There's no loss or diminution.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam.
Purnamidam. Purnameva Vashishate.
1 minus 1 equals 1. Prabhupada.
Infinity plus minus infinity. Left remainder is infinity.
Purna, Purnatana, Purnatara. It's perfect and complete. It's more perfect and even most.
Another way that they explained about time is in hankering and lamenting. Hankering for the future, lamenting for the past, and on doing things improperly. So they said because in the spiritual world, everything is done so perfectly, there's no hankering and there's no lamenting, and it has to do with your change of bodies. So since you're not changing bodies, you're not hankering and you're not lamenting, everything's being done perfectly. There isn't any experience of time.
Madan, when do you speak again? When does Madan speak again?
Next week.
Okay, would you go over the prayers of the that Madan.
Well,
when do you, I want you to go over again the prayers of the. I'm talking. I have a question. Even interrupt when I'm asking a question.
You're giving a demand. You're not asking a question.
I'm demanding. I'm ordering. To go. Could you go over the prayers of the personified Vedas? How Krishna is pleased to be described in these galactic and cosmic and mysterious ways.
You mean we have to jump to chapter 87 now?
No, Montan quotes is quoting to support what we're going to talk about in the second canto.
Wow.
Thank you.
You mean there's a connection? I mean, the 10th canto and
yes,
second canto?
Jiva is, who said it? Jiva Goswami says every canto, everything is in each canto.
Wow.
Mother
Ramananda
Damayanti.
ji, didn't you say that the smallest particle is an atom? Don't the modern scientists, rascal scientists, say that the nuclear energy, particularly the bomb, comes from splitting the atom?
Yeah.
Isn't that what? No, I'm not saying it's correct, but isn't that what they say? So they must be wrong.
Yeah, but how could the scientists be wrong? They're never wrong.
Well, look at the result. They blow up the world. They must be right.
But I tell you, it's so clear in Lord Kapila Dev's description about the atom that it is indivisible. This whole thing about subatomic particles it's got to be wrong, according to the Bhagavatam.
Really?
Well,
is that
if you look at the
Kapila?
verses,
What chapter is that?
Chapter 11.
Kapila doesn't speak that, does he?
The calculation of time?
I thought that's Maitreya Muni.
Is it? Oh, maybe I'm wrong. I thought it was Kapila.
Kapila starts talking Kapila Tattva Sankhyata in the beginning of 25 or something.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong about that. But as far as the description there, it says it's indivisible. And in the purport, Srila Prabhupada describes it. It is the smallest unit. It cannot be destroyed.
I thought the smallest unit was my brain.
Oh my goodness! No. There's plenty of people that have smaller brains. I wanted to address Damayanti Mataji's point, and then maybe we should quit because it's a little after.
It's after time. It's too much time now.
Well, hey, look, when
it's too much time. You know, it's too much time. We spent time.
That's right. And since I'm giving class, we're going to end on time.
On time.
So she makes the point, there is no time, but still memories of past events. How was there no time? So I would like to point out again that time means destruction. In the material world, there's creation, and then there's immediately destruction. So in the spiritual world, there's no time, but still you can, if that's what you're referring to, you can remember past events. But
they're called past times. Past means they must have happened because they passed past times.
I thought that was more like in a colloquial sense.
Anyway,
you pass your time without.
They're not called future times. They're called past times. They're not called present times. They're called past times. Anyway, I'm just being clever, but too clever.
Very clever. Okay, Prabhu. So thank you very much for your kindly listening. And we'll see everybody back again tomorrow, hopefully.
Thank you, Ramananda ji. Very nice class. A lot of interesting comments. That was a lot of fun.
Okay. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.